All right, so I'm Peyton O'Neill, our Director of Marketing here at Apiiro. I'm with Netta, our product manager that's been owning software supply chain security. I'm just going to quickly go through a little bit of background. If you're joining us, I'm sure you have at least some knowledge of what we're talking about here, but just give some quick background and challenges and give our perspective on how we're approaching software supply chain security. I'll hand it over to Netta. She'll give you a quick rundown on what's included in our offering and then go through a pretty in-depth demo. So we'll leave most of the time for that. You don't have to listen to me talk for too long. Okay, so why are we still talking about software supply chain security? It feels like the last 3 years have been all-consuming with software supply chain attacks, SolarWinds, CodeCub, all of these different types of supply chain attacks, including vulnerabilities, Log4Shell. And unfortunately, they're not going away. We've seen a huge increase in attacks over the past 3 years. And the impact is pretty devastating on the market and on individual companies. So we still need to be thinking about this and solving this problem. I'm not going to go into too much detail here. What are we talking about when we talk about software supply chain security? Really is the components and processes that make up applications and software supply chains from source to build to deploy. The market is very noisy. Security vendors are very good at mixing messages, and there's a lot of gray area, I would say, when it comes to what is like actually included in a software supply chain or software supply chain security. We view it very much as like an emphasis on third-party components. So from source, looking at like how code and application components come together in IDEs and your source control manager, in builds, how we're CI/CD pipelines, pipeline dependencies, containers and registries, and then to deploy, how they're actually getting packaged up and sent to the target, which also we would put ASPM in here as well. Netta will go over a little bit more what's in the Apiiro platform now, but this is just kind of like a very high level view of what we're talking about to set the stage. And why are we doing this? Why is Apiiro tackling this challenge? Number one is the siloed tools in the space. So there's, as you probably are well aware of, tons and tons of software supply chain security vendors that are tackling little pieces of supply chain security. Tons of tools, tool overload, and often even worse than that is they're siloed from sort of like more traditional application security tools, whether it's your SAST or DAST or SCA, and also the processes. So many application risks are not binary vulnerabilities or misconfigurations that just need to be remediated or addressed. They need to be further investigated with code reviews and threat models and even penetration testing. So we need a more continuous sort of feedback cycle from these sort of newer types of weaknesses or threats to how we actually understand and assess our applications and supply chains. And it's not just a tool problem. It's probably a very small portion of the actual challenge. It's also the people. So looking at the sort of evolution of software supply chain security, really sort of originated more from DevOps and development teams, where application security has, is very entrenched, very sort of traditional roles, changing a little bit here in the past couple of years. But because of how software supply chain security has evolved, there are definitely some major silos between AppSec and Dev or DevOps. And a lot of software supply chain security tooling is more geared to those people, also kind of making that gap between the teams more extreme. And this leads to more work, more expense for AppSec and compliance and more exposed risk. So at Apiiro, we think that supply chain security should be absolutely integrated natively into whatever you're using for your application security sort of platform or single pane of glass. For us, application security posture management. If you're not familiar with ASPM, it's really just kind of evolved last year into like a more well-defined category. It's been pretty hyped up the past couple months, I would say last half of the year. And they're really platforms that are designed to unify, bring together all of your security signals from all of your tools, and then contextualize those signals based on your application architecture and business so that you can prioritize the highest business critical risks, fix them faster, and then a big automation layer to help you automate risk assessments, remediations, developer guardrails. So a complete sort of governance component in there as well. And for what it's worth, Gartner says by 2026, 40% of organizations that produce software will adopt ASPM in some form or another, which is great. Our approach, I'm just going to go quickly over so you have some context when Netta jumps into the demo. We are very, very deeply rooted in the inventory that we create. The foundation of everything we do at Apiiro as part of our ASPM platform is rooted in our application and risk inventory. We call it our XBOM, so your extended software bill of materials. We connect throughout the development lifecycle from your ticketing systems to your API gateways and Kubernetes clusters to deeply, deeply understand and analyze your application and software supply chain components. Netta will show you what that looks like in reality in the platform. But this allows you to get continuous application risk visibility and to automate risk assessment, monitor code changes, understand which are material, which are risky. And we also integrate with your security tooling. So across different types of categories of tooling, SAST, SCA, CSPM even, to bring all of those signals again into our platform. Apiiro also has some native solutions, secret security, API security testing and code, some open source security, and what we're covering today, software supply chain security. And with all of that sort of as an inventory, we aggregate, we correlate, we prioritize based on that inventory. So we contextualize all of those signals. And we give you the tools you need to remediate risks with this single control plane that helps you automate remediations and prevent risk from being released or deployed via developer guardrails and your source control managers. So commenting or blocking pull requests or your builds. And then of course, dashboards and reporting to give you that kind of bird's eye view, understanding of your application risk lifecycle. So with that, I will hand over to Netta.
Thank you, Peyton. Let me just share my screen. Okay, you can see my screen, right?
Yep.
Okay, so let's talk about our software supply chain. So first of all, Apiiro software supply chain is built natively into Apiiro's ASPM. It extends our inventory with the SDM repositories, our CI/CD pipelines, contributor activities, and insight that we provide. We allow for SDMs and CI/CD risk detection assessment. This is included in our platform, and we benefit from our existing platform capabilities within these risks, and provide detections such as pipeline misconfigurations, weak branch protections, and different SCM risks, as well as tie in with the other risks that we already have in the system to get benefits and values from having toxic combinations throughout the SDLC and the software security pipelines. Our extending this platform with our risk-based governance allows us to create policies and workflows to be able to trigger different actions based on activities, material changes, and risks that are detected in the system. And these policies follow CIS and SALSA best practices. So we've got you covered. This basically allows teams to reduce supply chain risks without needing another tool. So you have all a single pane of glass, have all risks combined in a single tool, eliminate risks, eliminate gaps that are left by siloed software supply chain solutions, and reduce the manual work that is needed to secure pipelines and SCMs using our governance and workflows. Now, let's see this in action and switch into the live demo that we have. Okay, so in this demo, I'm going to show you basically the Apiiro platform and how this software supply chain security solution is built into it. So first of all, when deploying Apiiro, the first thing that you want to do is connect your SCMs in order for us to be able to scan them and provide a full inventory into and visibility into your environment. We also allow you to connect all your different tools throughout the SDLC, starting from design, connecting your ticketing systems into security tools, your build systems, and runtime tools in order to get runtime context to those risks that we find. So what we do is basically once you connect your SCMs, which takes basically a few minutes, we analyze your code and build an initial inventory of your system that gives you really a very high level but deep overview of what you have, all the different technologies that we have that you have in your environment, all the security controls, data access, infrastructure, development tools, and cloud assets that you have, and expose you to the different risks that you have in the system, and basically the applications that are at risk, which data is exposed, sensitive data, PII fields, and give you a really high-level overview of the security in your environment. We also do an inventory, a full inventory of repositories. We can filter these repositories by the business impact that they hold. So we analyze these repositories and assess the business impact by understanding the content of the repository, but also allow you to override this with manual configurations that are based on the estimated revenue of an application and number of users and these kind of properties. We can also search for repositories and dive into them. So let's take a repository, for example, and check it out. So when looking at a repository, we build a full timeline. This is a continuous analysis of the different commits in a repository. So you can really see exactly which commits contain material changes that contributor who performed these material changes, the risks that they introduce as part of which pull request and tickets, and give you really an understanding of what is going on in this repository. We can also dive into the inventory of our repository and view a full list of the components that we detect, such as APIs, different technologies, the dependencies that the repository is using. Give you a view of what kind of data models do you have, if you have sensitive data, secrets, and then also provide with a view of who are the contributors that are part of your repository, what is their activity within the repository, and give you different insights to help you identify with security champions, maybe users that are new to the system and you should pay more attention to the code that they commit. And we basically build a full profile of all the contributors that have access to the system, the type of access that they have, the type of permissions that they have to a repository and to any repository, and a history of all their commits, even if they're not an active contributor anymore. We can also allow you to check out for users that are inactive but still have permissions, such as this user, though they're not actively using their permissions, and perhaps you would want to remove them. Next, I want to dive into our CI/CD pipelines. We also build an inventory for CI/CD pipelines of different technologies. We can select our Azure pipelines, for example, and check out what is available for each pipeline. So let's dive into that. Each pipeline we analyze and identify which repositories are being checked out by that pipeline. Is that repository monitored by Apiiro or not? Which dependencies are in use by each pipeline? So when we say dependencies, these are actual pipeline dependencies. So for example, in GitHub Actions, that would be your actions. In Jenkins, that would be your plugins. And exactly when are they referenced in code, which version are in use, and so on. We also detect different secrets within a pipeline. So these secrets can be used as environment variables, but once a malicious user gets access into these into your pipeline, those could be at jeopardy. So this is something that is very important to understand, and as well as tie it all together to your applications. So which application is this pipeline part of based on the repositories that are being checked out by? So with that said, our inventory really gives you an understanding of what you have in the system, and allows you AppSec teams to get visibility into your development processes, environment, things that you would usually need to go and ask. The development teams give you kind of an independence to be able to query different scenarios on your own. Moving on from our inventory into our risks. So one of the strongest capabilities of an ASPM tool is being to have a single pane of glass of all your different risks from all your security tools, as well as our built-in security tools, such as our pipeline solution. So we have this view of all the risks within the system, split. You can filter it by different categories, and you can also filter and prioritize based on context that we provide you. So for example, the status of the risks, are they part of applicative code? So when we analyze your code, we can tell and focus basically only on code that is actual application related and not testing or documentation. and filter those out. We can understand by your runtime context which risks are related to code that is deployed and related also to code that is actually internet exposed. And you can also drill down and filter by, is this risk part of active development? Is it of high business impact? And basically reduce the amount of false positives that you have and focus on really like the high and critical items that you have. So basically we took all of these risks that we have in the system and reduced it to the actual 2% that matter. Let's go and dive into supply chain security. So while we have this all risk view, we also have views that are divided into the different categories, different solutions that we have. And we can drill into risks that are specific for supply chain. So in our supply chain risk, we have a few categories that we monitor. We have branch protection rules that are looking at your branches and checking if they hold according to your organizational policies, checking for excessive permissions in repositories, rules for pipelines. So we spoke about pipeline dependencies. We want to understand the pipeline dependencies that are vulnerable and puts your pipelines at risk, and also detect for pipeline misconfigurations. Let's look at a few examples. So we can see here, we have a risk for branch policy that this branch does not have any code reviewers. We can see the evidence for this and understand exactly what is the entity that is at risk. So we are talking about this branch. It has 0 code reviewers. If we go to the remediation tab, we can see exactly how to remediate, the steps that are needed, and who can remediate it. So in the contributors, we give you a recommendation of who is the best person to contact for remediation. In this case, since this is a risk that requires administrative permissions, then we recommend you to the most active administrator in this repository. And you can perform actions in order to remediate this. So first of all, you have the accept ignore. You can also perform actions such as send a Slack message to the contributor, create tickets in different communication system and ticketing systems, and so on. Let's look at another example from pipelines. So we have a critical risk. We have a pipeline dependency of type GitHub Actions. We see that this is the code that introduced this risk. And we can understand exactly what is the vulnerability, the CVSS score, which version is vulnerable, and where is the fixed version. And in a similar manner, we can go to the remediation tab and see the contributor that is best to contact in this context of code. Same here, we can go and explore the code itself or contact anyone with these actions. And although this is great, we also want to have less manual work to remediate risks and maybe prevent them before they're actually introduced into code. And this is why we have our governance mechanism and workflows. So let's check that out. Our workflow mechanism basically looks into changes in the system, new code that is being introduced, risks that are found, and easily allows you to set up policies in order to take automatic actions for that. So we have some workflow recipes that are best practices to get you set up and going. Let's take a look at an example in the world of supply chain. So we have this workflow that looks at pull requests that are opened or updated basically anywhere, but you can configure it to specific repositories or applications. And we want to trigger this workflow for whenever we see a change in a pipeline configuration file. So whenever a pipeline is added, modified, removed, whatever, we can take action. So this specific action would be to comment on this pull request on behalf of Apiiro. We can also set a point of contact of this application as a reviewer. So I've selected the team lead. And we can also perform different actions such as block merge of pull requests. So we can do that if the type of change introduces a risk, and also be able to create different workflows of different actions that also automate sending messages and so on. This allows you to programmatically strengthen your application security posture and be able to control the risks that are being introduced into your environment and being able to stop them before they access and enter the code. I want to take you through another very cool capability that we've introduced, which is the risk graph explorer. With the risk graph explorer, you're able to create very complex queries, but in a very easy interface that you can basically query anything that you may need. Maybe it is to answer compliance audit questions or understand different tooling or components within your system without the need to involve your development team. So you have everything that you may want to answer at your hands. And let's look at a few examples that are related to supply chain. And this basically is a very cool tool that allows you to look and combine different insights from the different ends of your supply chain and combine them all together. So in this example, I can look at secrets and check for secrets that are valid. And I want to understand if I have valid secrets, but in repositories that don't have branch protection or that don't have enough code reviewers. And these repositories happen to have high business impact. So I can easily query this throughout my entire system and get an answer, a quick answer of what is at risk. I can also look at pipeline configuration file example. So in this example, I'm looking at pipeline configuration file that are not part of any test logic and are related to repositories that are also of high business impact. And in this case, I want to understand if they contain any sensitive data. So I can run this query and then get a result of which pipelines answer to these conditions. I can also look at any insight that I have in Apiiro. So go through them. In this example, I checked for sensitive data, but I can look for APIs missing authorizations. I get an understanding about what is the different risk level of the repository, and basically query for any entity that I have in the system and get an understanding of the risks. What is also very cool at this, that I can create a policy out of my query and set a risk. So whenever I happen to get a match for these conditions, I can classify this as any risk level that I want, and basically add this to my governance policies. Okay, let's go back into our dashboards. So our dashboards basically give you a bird's eye view of your entire application security posture, and be able to monitor your environment. How are you handling your security processes in the organization? What is the mean time to remediate versus the SLA that you set up in the organization? Look at trends of discovered versus closed risk. Look at the commits that you have in the system. You can see the risky material changes compared to the entire commits in the system. And then also look at how you remediate risks and based on their age and their severity. We also have a dashboard per solution, so you can drill into any specific solution that you have at interest, and have measures that are dedicated to those solutions as well. So for example, for supply chain, you could look at trends for risky pipelines that are discovered. So again, we have misconfigurations in pipelines and vulnerable pipelines. We can also look at, get a quick view of which are the most high business impact repositories that have inactive contributors. And also look at the abnormal commits that you may have throughout the organization. So this kind of ties it all from getting visibility into your inventory throughout the risks that you have and how you measure them within the organization.
Awesome. Thank you, Netta. And we will take questions. So if you are still with us, use the Q&A panel and we'll get those questions. That was awesome. Thank you very much. Okay, here's one. We kind of covered this. What SCMs and pipelines do you support?
Yeah, so for pipelines, we cover the major CI/CD tools. So this includes Jenkins, GitHub Actions, GitLab CI, Azure Pipelines, Circle CI. For SCMs, for branch protection and permissions, we currently support GitHub and GitLab, and we will soon extend this to all our other SCMs that we are supporting.
Another one related to coverage. What programming languages are you covering with SAST? So maybe cover our SaaS solution and matrix.
So for our SaaS solution, we are actually an ASPM that ingests risks from the different SaaS tools. So any SaaS tool that supports any language, basically we can ingest and view within Apiiro.
Okay, do you support SCA, and do you consider that as a part of supply chain security? Maybe if you want to take the first part, I can take the second.
Yeah. So yeah, we have a built-in solution, SCA solution that detects dependencies and licenses and build an SBOM. And yeah, so take the second part of, is it?
Yeah. And kind of going back to looking at the supply chain landscape, absolutely. There are third-party components that can be vulnerable and provide sort of an entry point or a pivot point to gain access or, you know, unauthorized access. So absolutely part of software supply chain security. I think that's kind of one of the areas that blends between like AppSec or like code security and supply chain security. And all of, this is multidimensional, everything is interconnected, so it doesn't have to be black or white. Right, maybe one more. Related, why do you think supply chain security should be part of ASPM? Kind of to piggyback off of the last question, the lines between all of these layers are super blurred across time and across layers, from infrastructure to including pipelines, source control managers, to application layer. All of these things are interconnected now. So if you're not taking an interconnected view, you will end up with gaps, just because maybe one vulnerability that in isolation maybe isn't super risky to the business, but when, just like Netta was showing, when, like, let's say an exposed secret is in a public repository, or a vulnerability in a repository that doesn't have enough reviewers, then it becomes a business critical risk. So taking that interconnected view is really important. And also, just going back to kind of the core value of ASPM, it's also about providing visibility into your components. And of those components, supply chain components are very important. They're the backbone of software development now. So being able to give AppSec teams just visibility and context is valuable in and of itself. We have so many customers or people we talk to that have no idea how many pipelines they have. They have no idea what contributors have access to what repositories. So just giving that visibility as part of our approach to ASPM is super valuable, along with other components. So APIs and open source dependencies and secrets, all of these are like core competencies in cloud native applications. So they need to be our core competencies as well.